The prophets have been foretelling for years the great revival coming to America in ways it has never been seen before. Have we reached the fullness of times? Do all the pieces to the puzzle of prophecies old and new finally connect? What is God's agenda for America? Let's go on a prophetic journey and find out. What is God's agenda for America? Thank you for joining this prophetic journey, chronicling the words of more than 100 prophetic voices in America, foretelling this great awakening that is to come. I created this video series for a reason. I believe the Great Awakening is now upon us. In the first 5 videos, we merely covered a time span of 80 years, from Smith Wigglesworth in 1939 to Todd Bentley in 2017. You would think we were almost done. My friends, we are just getting started. If you have not watched the first 5 videos, I'd recommend going back and starting at the beginning. Because even though each prophecy stands by itself, together they form an elaborate map for all that is to come. I start my account of the year 2018 with Jane Hamon to emphasize why our response to the words of the prophets is so important. On January 8th, 2018, Jane said, "As I was praying for 2018, the Lord said, 'This is a time for the prophet's reward.' Matthew 10:40-41. 'He who receives a prophet in my name shall receive a prophet's reward.' Those who have received prophetic promises from God and those who operate and function in it will experience one of the greatest seasons of favor, honor, advancement, and promotion as we align, obey, and actively participate with all God has said." And I saw the word prophet's reward as a giant battering ram slamming against a huge locked gate, opening tremendous opportunities. The prophet's reward releases rapid fulfillment of the things God has promised. Jane Hamon used 3 verbs to describe the responses God is looking for us. 1, to align, 2, to obey, and 3, to actively participate. As we continue on this journey, you will see a theme beginning to develop of a line drawn in the sand. In fact, you first heard that saying in video number 4 at the end of James Gall's 2012 dream in Brazil. Now, while that dream solely represented God's plans for a spiritual harvest, it has become increasingly clear in the prophetic community that God's pathway to revival is political upheaval. Before there is a great awakening, there first must be a rude awakening. Over the last 4 years, I have seen a painful division in the church between Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals, nationalists and globalists, constitutionalists and socialists. Over the last 4 years, a myriad of different labels have risen up to define that line in the sand. Now, while I feel like I'm walking in a minefield by addressing this matter, I believe it's a matter I need to address. While I don't believe God is going to separate the church by their opinions of Donald Trump, I do believe we're at a crossroads of sober consideration. For years, God has been telling us through his prophets what side of the fence he stands on. For those of us who are new to the prophetic and are hearing this for the first time, Jesus smiles with anticipatory joy at the newfound treasure chest of revelation that now unfolds before you. For many, you are well familiar with the prophetic storyline. You've heard it for years in your prophetic circles and you've snubbed it in disdain. And if you have, it is completely understandable. Like I said, before God opened my eyes, I too thought Trump was a horse's ass. Furthermore, if you watch the mainstream news media, you have been unknowingly brainwashed by a narrative that is at war with God. And as blunt as that is, I have to say it because I believe it's the truth. I believe we stand at a crossroads because God has made his plans explicitly clear, and in his grace, he is continuing to do so. Am I saying that Christians will lose their salvation if they don't side with Donald Trump? Absolutely not. However, I do want to explain what I do mean by quoting the words of one well-intentioned Christian. I asked, "Are you saying you believe that 99% of God's prophetic community is wrong?" He responded, "No. I know that 99% of them are wrong." That's a dangerous response. You may not like Donald Trump. You may not agree with things he says or ways that he leads. But all throughout the Bible, God speaks his will to people through the prophets. God has not changed. If we believe that 99% of the prophetic community is wrong, we establish 2 dangerous premises. First, we establish a pride that says, "I am right and mostly everybody else is wrong." Do we not understand that every good and perfect gift comes from above? I only speak of what I have learned because I have prayed well over 100 times. Jesus, without your guidance, I'm a blind man walking in the dark. I want the truth and nothing but the truth. This is the humility that God honors. He has not given us the prophets to tell us what to do, but to facilitate a journey. No one person has the full storyline, but each one brings different pieces to the table, just as each person in the church is part of the larger body of Christ. Jesus does not expect us to understand it all, nor does he expect us to meticulously weed through all the prophecies to try to understand it. He merely wants us to come as children with starry-eyed wonder and to be willing to be led on a mystery that is bigger than we are. God's agenda for America has already been unveiled. The wheels are already in motion. For those who have been on their own prophetic journey with God, he is desiring to incorporate his promises for your life into the larger storyline that is at hand. For those of you who are new to the Christian journey, or for Christians who are new to the prophetic journey, God wants to invite you into a greater adventure of hearing from him and trusting him as we follow. But for believers who have stood against God's plan because they were offended by the man Donald Trump, or by the response of other Christians, or by the style of certain prophets, I really encourage you to consider that God's ways may be higher than ours here. Gene Hammond gave us 3 responses in this hour. The second response is to obey, and the third is to actively participate. But you cannot obey and participate in something you have not aligned with. Again, I am not suggesting a believer would lose his salvation by choosing to believe and stand for another agenda, but I am suggesting that God is now beginning to reveal and release long-awaited promises to his people. But those promises align with his greater agenda, not ours. I believe that America is at a crossroads today. This series of videos is intended to create a prophetic landscape for the days ahead, so we can more easily adjust, align with what God is doing, and obey and actively participate with it accordingly. On January 29th, 2018, Ben Lim said, "There is a spirit of suddenlies that has overtaken the earth. The whole earth is being swept up in outrageous, fascinating, and overwhelming creativity. The whole world is being taken into new dimensions of God's glory." For those of you who had forgotten about the great prophet Paul Cain, on February 2nd, 2018, he posted this on the Elisha list. "You're going to see some things that will leave some of you without words for days. There will be a resurgence of the fear of the Lord coming, and it will fall suddenly, unexpectedly, and unannounced. A new day is coming. It is not an encore. This will be like no other. This will be a hallmark of a huge wave of the Spirit that will sweep around the earth. It will be about holiness and purity of heart. It is a waste of time telling people to get ready. It will just come, suddenly." 5 days later, on February 7th, 2018, another father of the last revival, John Kilpatrick, gave this word: "Before my coming, all of America will be ablaze with the glory of God." On February 18th, 2018, Dutch Sheets related a dream from a trusted prophet in which there were hundreds of angels and 2 of history's greatest revivalists, Rees Howells and John Knox, with a tuning fork and a gavel. The people in the room then morphed into the Army of Special Forces. Sheets added, "The church is about to move into a completely new level of enforcing kingdom rule and the will of God upon the earth." For context, Rees Howells was a great prayer intercessor that saw a revival in Africa 100 years ago and later prayed for the end of Nazi Germany. If you'll remember from video number 4, another dream correlated John Knox and the number 313 with Donald Trump and the 313th day of 2016, Election Day. On the same day, Hank Kunneman, Chuck Pierce, and Rich Vega gave words on Sid Roth's show of the Supernatural. Hank Kunneman began, "God's not talking someday, he's talking a now day. That's the one thing that will mark this season. The voice of the Lord will speak louder than the voice of the media. And when my voice comes, it shall be like the sound of thunder. Listen to the sound of thunder, for you in the United States will say, we never heard it like this before. But I say, look to the lightning, for my voice is like the voice of thunder, and like lightning will strike down the forces of witchcraft that have been holding down the forces of cities and territories. But by my voice I will shake, I will quake, and I will divide, and my ways shall be reported. As a sign of a shift beginning to come, wait for my name to be declared upon the airwaves." Kunneman continues, "I saw a vision on New Year's Eve of God's hand coming down upon both Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. Look to 2020, when people will start to get perfect vision to see what God has been saying to the prophets about a global move of the Spirit. This is that which was spoken of by the prophet Joel. The glory is already in manifestation. This will be the year of records because I want this to be shown to the people of the earth as a sign of what I'm about to do on the earth, in this nation, and in the administration. This will be the year of records because I want this to be shown to the people of the earth as a sign of what I'm about to do in the earth, in this nation, and in this administration. And I'm going to tie Canada and Mexico in and join the hands of this man and these lands and cause it to become North America the Great. Chuck Pierce followed by saying, we're coming into a place this year where it'll be a now moment, when blessing overtakes you because we've returned to God's order. This year is a new beginning for all of us. This is a year of divine help and divine visitation. This is a year of unlocking the kingdom. We need to take off the old garments and put on the new move of the Spirit. He continued, I awoke from a dream, and an angel stood and said, I am the angel of war in God's covenant harvest plans. Then I could see what he saw. Because Trump decreed that Jerusalem would be the capital of Israel, something broke in the Spirit, doing something no president before him had ever done. Rich Vega then concluded the show saying, God is bringing us in 2018 to the end of the system that has kept us bound and is judging the system that has corrupted society, while beginning a new life for those who have been faithfully waiting for the promises of God. He later added, I'm going to empower the West Coast Church to go back to the days of Aimee Semple McPherson. West Coast Church, God is going to anoint you to preach the gospel with power. On April 10th, 2018, Stephen Springer wrote, I had a dream a while back where I was staying on a large platform in a packed stadium with Lou Engle on one side and Billy Graham on the other. Angels were dancing in the heavenlies. The masses came forward, falling on their knees. People were getting out of wheelchairs. Blind eyes were seeing, and the deaf could hear. Now, for those of you who are thinking, well, that's a false word. Billy Graham died in 2019. Let me just remind you that dreams are often more symbolic than literal. I interpret the dream to represent the mantles of prayer, intercession, and evangelism converging together. Bill Yount posted this word on April 11th. Notice how reminiscent it is of Rick Joyner's word from 1987. I saw the Spirit of the Lord as a great ocean beginning to recede off an enormous shoreline. This was a season and time when the tide was beginning to go out. The body of Christ was standing in the water, practically immersed in the tide, but it gradually started to go out, and we began to feel exposed. It seemed like we stood spiritually naked as the tide was going out. Even the elect started crying, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Those on the shore, the world, stood mocking our nakedness. The time frame seemed like forever, as though they were separated from God and nothing appeared but failure. Many turned back toward the shore and gave up on waiting, convinced that God had forsaken them by all appearances. But a remnant remained and stood still, waiting upon the Lord, confessing their sins, repenting and interceding for the world, realizing it is not by might, but by my Spirit. Suddenly, Yount continues, there is a great calm. Then the Lord spoke. The tide is beginning to turn. The tide is beginning to turn. This is the tsunami of my glory that the earth has been waiting for. It was wave after wave. These waves were bringing in the lost from the deepest part of the sea. Porn stars, mass murderers, witches, you name it. The powers of hell were letting go of them. Multitudes were being saved as the waves of salvation continued to literally cover the earth. Finally, the Lord spoke. Truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, like the waters cover the seas. Now, during the time of these last 10 prophetic words, Trump was busy making history. As many prophets foresaw, the president recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel on December 22, 2017, though the United States voted overwhelmingly to condemn it. Then, on February 22, 2018, Trump signed the plans to move the United States Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in order to coincide with the 70-year anniversary of Israel's founding. At the embassy's unveiling on May 16, 2018, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made this statement. I want to proclaim that the Jewish people have a long memory, so we remember the proclamation of the King Cyrus the Great, the Persian king 2,500 years ago. Mr. President, This will be remembered by our people throughout the ages. On June 14th, Charlie Shamp was taken into a vision whereby he saw the deep-seated old roots of corruption in the foundation of the White House. He starts, "The White House appeared to be shaped like a very old tree with its branches withering. Suddenly, the hand of the Lord came and pulled it from the ground. Another White House was put in its place, one where its roots revealed righteousness and peace. The Lord planted it in rich soil and it began to flourish. I was then lifted up and taken to the House of Representatives and the Supreme Court, where I saw them all uprooted and replaced with new trees with foundations of righteousness and peace." He added, "I will extend Trump's presidency into the second term by the power of my right hand. What I have done in the White House will happen in every branch of government, for I will pull out corruption and plant trees that bear good fruit. I will also come to America with another wave of revival. This will be the third wave, and it will crash against the shore so intensely that this nation will awaken to righteousness again. As a sure sign that these things will come to pass, there will be a wave of conservatives elected during the midterm election in November. It will be breaking news. They will carry the House and the Senate, and I will uproot, replant, and rebuild this nation." Well, like I said, we see in part, we don't see in part. Conservatives did not carry the House and the Senate in the 1998 elections. They took the Senate, but not the House. Nonetheless, while not fully accurate, the majority in the Senate inevitably saved Trump from being removed in response to the House impeachment hearing in January 2020. Finally, on June 15th, 2018, Sean Bowles posted this on the Elijah List, in light of the historic meeting Trump had with North Korean President Kim Jong-un 4 days earlier. To put their talks in context, President Kim described it this way: "The old prejudices and practices worked as obstacles on our way forward, but we've overcome all of them, and we are here today." Bowles began the article by describing a visitation he had 12 years earlier by the Angel of Korea. The angel said, "Behold, I am strong, and I shall do mighty works, even in preparing Israel for the return of Jesus." When Sean asked him whether he represented North or South Korea, the angel spoke back adamantly, "I am from Korea," then added, "God shall do a mighty work through the intercession of nations of the world to reestablish unity between North and South Korea. There will be a day in your lifetime when your president will help open the North, and the North and the South will have unification. God is sending you to Korea." 2 years later, Sean met with Lee Myung-bak, who later went on to serve as South Korea's president from 2008 to 2013. When few Koreans believed that he would be the next president, Sean prophesied that he would. Now, this would seem to be a strange note to end on because it has nothing to do with America, but I want to reinforce this. What's coming is more than a national revival. It is a global awakening. The focus of this series has been God's agenda for America, but that vision expands far wider than us. The whole world is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Thanks for tuning in. Please click on the next video to chronicle the next chain in the prophetic chronology, the latter part of 2018. 2 years down, 2 to go.